a thought on breast cancer?
Well, look, I'm very conscious that we've had some amazing trailblazing women prepared to talk about their own journeys with cancer. It's so important. Check your breasts, know your body, as the doctor just said, know what's unusual and different for you. But I think it's so important that we continue research into it, particularly when you look at the numbers of younger women being impacted by it.
Yeah, indeed. So talk to me about Home Office figures that we've seen in the papers this morning, very much in your area of expertise, being told that it's likely to cost the UK government £169,000 per person to send people to Rwanda.
Well, these figures have come out from the Home Office literally in the last 24 hours. My committee's been looking at the asylum system over the course of the last 18 months. We haven't looked at the value for money issue. What we've been looking at is the impact on women, on LGBT people and on children in the asylum system and what we think the government needs to do to protect and safeguard children.
Does that sound, I'll come on to that, but does that sound like value for money, £169,000 per person?
No, I don't think it does. And I have always been concerned that the Rwanda scheme is not only very difficult to justify why we should be sending asylum seekers to Rwanda to be processed within the Rwandan asylum system, when actually we should have better systems set up here to do it. But the value for money question is a perfectly legitimate and important one. And it's worrying when the Home Office themselves are saying that they can't be certain that these figures are accurate, and they're all predicated on the Rwandan scheme acting as a deterrent. And to date, we've not seen it act as a deterrent.
What you've particularly been focusing on is those that find themselves caught up in the system, how they're being treated, how they're being looked after, and what, if anything, we can do to make that a more humane process.
So we looked particularly at pregnant women who all too often are moved around, even in late stages of pregnancy or shortly after they've given birth. We are saying to the Home Office that pregnant women should only be moved after medical advice has been taken, but we're particularly concerned that there should be no moves to detain children as part of family groups, and certainly some of the government's new proposals are not talking about excluding children from the detention estate and not talking about excluding children from the Rwanda scheme.
You are suggesting that potentially those that are caught up in the system for now should get something like 75% of the value of universal credit. That's not going to be very popular with some aspects, some parts of the British public.
We took a lot of evidence from people who are currently in this country, living within the supported asylum system, who are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to afford basic toiletries, struggling to afford sanitary products. And we were concerned that the figure set by the Home Office for assistance, which has been recently increased to about £45 per week, was simply inadequate in a cost of living crisis for women and for people with disabilities to live on.
You also were talking about children there. You think that children should be excluded from detention, but the counter-argument to that is some who come over to this country suggest that they are children. They've no papers to prove otherwise. They suggest that they're children when actually they are anything but.
So I think there are two really important and distinct issues here. We, as a country, have a duty under legislation to look after children. So whether children are accompanied or unaccompanied, the Children's Act applies, and we should be making sure that they're in school. The question as to age verification is a really important one. Nobody wants the UK asylum system to be taken advantage of. So actually I'm very supportive of rigorous Home Office checks on asylum seekers' ages. I don't have a problem with that at all. But what my committee is saying, when children are children, then they should be looked after, they should be safeguarded, they should be in school. They certainly should not be detained.
But how can you tell the difference between a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old in some cases?
Well, I would always argue that it's actually the kids in school who identify the fastest when somebody is the wrong age to be in an education setting and is claiming to be. But I would say that that's the Home Office's job. It's not my committee's job to determine how the Home Office verifies people's ages. They have a variety of tools at their disposal. They need to be using them.
Talk to me more generally about politics while I have you, if you wouldn't mind. The Home Office been accused of leaving people homeless by outbidding councils in a competition for accommodation. So the Home Office wanting spaces for asylum seekers rather than the councils being able to put homeless people in that accommodation.
So I think it's a really important point is that we know that the system is under enormous pressure. We know that there are tens of thousands of people seeking to make the channel crossing in small boats, which is incredibly dangerous and is only putting cash into the hands of people smugglers and organised crime gangs. So the Home Office is right to be working really hard to try and tackle those crime gangs. But when people are here, we have to make sure that they are housed decently. And there is a massive tension, and you're right to point it out, between people who might be on a local authority waiting list and the Home Office trying to find places for asylum seekers and indeed other sorts of supported housing. So it's never popular when, for example, the MOJ is trying to put bail hostels into some areas. And there is a conflict there. Now, the solution to that, and many people don't find that any more attractive, so we need to be building more houses. The government has a really ambitious target around house building, and that has to be the answer.
OK, but where does that leave us in the bidding war for now? What should the government do about it?
Well, it's about allocation of scarce resources as best you can, and the government needs to be working hand in glove with those local authorities who are trying to make sure that there is provision for both. It's a really hard job to do.
OK, it's good to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks.